Hello everyone, this is Ravindar Dundra and welcome back to my channel. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about class 9th CBSE Economics chapter number 3, that is poverty as challenge. So in the previous lectures, we have discussed about how the poverty is mainly caused, or you can also say the causes of poverty. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the solution for this poverty, which means how we can remove this poverty from the country. So let us discuss the next topic, that is anti-poverty measures. That means the programs or the methods which can be followed in order to remove this poverty. So basically there are mainly two ways through which the government has tried to remove this poverty. So one is by the promotion of economic growth, the first method, and the second one is targeted anti-poverty programs. So first we will see how the promotion, or you can say development of this economic growth has helped in reduction of poverty. Then we will discuss about some of the schemes started by the government in removing this poverty, which is we also call it as anti-poverty programs. So first let us discuss about this economic growth. So how economic growth has reduced this poverty is that if you take during the independence time, that means during 1947 and 1950s time, the rate of poverty in India is somewhere around 45%. That means out of 100 people, 45 people were living in the poverty. And this kind of poverty has continued till 1970s, and the reason is that from 1950s to 1970s the rate of economic growth was very slow, or you can say it is very lesser. But when economic growth jumped from 3.5 to 6% in 1970s, in 1980s, that means in 1970s till 1970s the economic growth was very less, only 3.5%. But by the year 1970s to 80s the economic growth was somewhere around 6%. So when the economic growth has started growing rapidly from 3.5 to 6%, slowly the amount of people living under the poverty also started reducing. So from this, what we can conclude is that higher growth rates helped in the reduction of poverty. That means if the growth rate is very high, there will be a reduction in the poverty. So therefore what we can say is that economic growth and poverty they both are strongly related. So you can say there is a strong link between economic growth as well as poverty. So if the economy is growing, the poverty will start reducing. So that is what you can say, there is a strong link between economic growth and poverty reduction. So how economic growth will reduce the poverty is that if the economy is growing, there will be more output and there will be more job creation. So if the jobs are mainly created, there will be more income. Then people can start investing in education as well as health, which automatically develops the human resource and ultimately it reduces the poverty. But again, when it comes to the economic growth, there is one drawback. You can say the poor people, or you can say the very poor people may not be able to benefit from this economic growth. So therefore the government has to take the second step in removing this poverty. So that is the anti-poverty programs. So by taking this anti-poverty programs, the government was trying to, or you can say is trying to reduce this poverty. So let us now discuss some of the schemes started by the government in order to reduce this poverty, which we also call them as anti-poverty programs. Discuss about some of the anti-poverty measures taken by the government in order to remove this poverty. So among them, some of the popular schemes were discussed here. So the first and very important and the most prominent scheme launched by the government in order to remove this poverty is that Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005, which is also known as MGNREGA. In short, sometimes people also call it as Manrega. So what is the main aim of this scheme? How it tries to eliminate this poverty is that the first and very important thing, it provides 100 days of employment to the rurally, or you can say those people who are unemployed mostly in rural areas. So for sure in a year under this scheme, people get 100 days of work. Then the next thing is that it also aims at this sustainable development. That means the main aim of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act is that it provides 100 days of work. At the same time, whatever the works that are done under this scheme will be also aimed at this sustainable development. That means it tries to protect this deforestation, at the same time soil erosion, and mostly it focuses on the activities which will develop the land and land productivity. So mostly these kind of activities are performed under this MGNREGA. Then apart from that, the next one is 1/3 of jobs have been reserved for women. So in order to improve the level of this women's standard of living, and at the same time in order to make them independent, the government has also reserved 1/3 of jobs have been reserved for this women in this scheme. Then the next one is, if government fails to provide job within 14 days of application, the government will pay unemployment allowance. That means, suppose if a person is unemployed, he wants to work, means then he can go and apply any kind of job under this scheme called this MGNREGA. And if the government fails to provide the job within 14 days of the application, then the person will get unemployment allowance. That means monthly some of the money will be given as an assurance for this man. So these are some of the features of this scheme known as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. And as of now, most of the beneficiaries of this scheme are coming from this categories such as SC and ST, and at the same time it has helped many people to come above this poverty line and to lead some minimum standard of living. And at the same time it has also provided almost 220 crore man days of work. You can say mostly it has provided jobs to 4.7 crore people population in the country. That means you can understand how much it is trying to develop the people, and at the same time how it is trying to eradicate this poverty. And apart from this, there are many other schemes launched by the government. So next we will discuss some other schemes launched by the government. Let us discuss about some other important anti-poverty measures designed by the government in order to reduce this poverty. So apart from this MGNREGA, the other schemes include this Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana. In short, we also call it as PMRY. And this scheme has been launched, or you can say started, in the year 1993. And the main aim of this scheme PMRY is that to create self-employment opportunities for educated unemployed in rural and small towns, which means you all know most of the people both in rural areas as well as urban areas, they face the problem of unemployment. Though they are educated, because of the lack of job opportunities they sit idle by unemployed. So therefore the main aim of the scheme is to provide self-employment, or you can say to create self-employment to the people who are educated but who are unemployed. So that is the main aim of this scheme called this Prime Minister Rozgar Yojana. Then apart from that, the next scheme was this known as this Rural Employment Generation Program. In short, we also call it as REGP. So from the name of the scheme itself, we can see that Rural Employment Generation Program. That means the scheme is aiming to generate employment opportunities mainly in the rural areas. So we will see when it was launched. So this scheme has been launched in the year 1995. So this was launched in 1993 and this was launched in 1995. And what is the main aim of this scheme is that to create self-employment opportunities in rural areas and small towns. So here when we discussed, here it is for educated unemployed, but here it is trying to create employment for rural areas mainly, and at the same time it also aims to create jobs, or you can say self-employment in the smaller towns. And under the scheme the government has set a target, and what is the target is that creating 25 lakh new jobs under the 10th 5-year plan. So we usually have 5-year plans. That means for every 5 years we'll have certain targets to be reached in that 5 years. So under this 10th 5-year plan, the government has set a target for creating 25 lakhs of new jobs under the scheme known as this Rural Employment Generation Program. So we will discuss some other schemes launched by the government in order to reduce this poverty. Let us discuss about some other important schemes launched by the government in order to reduce this poverty. So the next one is, you can call it as this Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana, which was launched in the year 1999. And what is the main aim of this scheme is that bringing poor people above the poverty line by organizing them into self-help groups through bank credit as well as subsidies. So that means under this scheme the government is trying to make the people to form into something known as self-help groups, or in short we also call it as this SHGs. So about which you learn much in your 10th standard. So under by organizing the people into self-help groups. The government is supporting them by providing bank credit, that means loans from the banks to the poor people to spend on their various needs, and at the same time by providing subsidies to the poor people. So by doing this bank credit and subsidy, the government is trying to make the people above the poverty line. That means the government is trying to uplift the poor people from this poverty. And at the same time, the next one is this Pradhan Mantri Gramodaya Yojana. In short, we also call it as PMGY, and this scheme was launched in the year 2000. And what is the main aim of this scheme is that the central government will provide support to the states for providing basic services. That means the central government is guiding all the state governments in supporting, or you can say in assisting some of the basic needs for the poor people, such as you take the health condition, or you can say providing health facilities to the poor people, or you can say primary health, and at the same time providing education facilities by setting up schools, and at the same time providing shelter, or you can say constructing some of the pakka houses for poor people. So water, safe drinking water, and electrification, or you can say electric supply. So all these facilities were provided by the government by giving support to the state government. That means the central government is giving support to the state governments in providing all these services. And apart from this, there is one more scheme which was launched by the government, that is Antyodaya Anna Yojana, which also aims to provide the food for this poor people. So these are some of the schemes which are launched by this government in order to reduce this poverty. So now what we will see is that what is the success rate of this poverty schemes, how far they have succeeded, and what are the challenges that were faced by these schemes. Let us discuss about the results of this anti-poverty schemes. So just now we have seen lot of schemes launched by the government, but what is the performance of these schemes, whether they helped in reducing the poverty or not? So let us see now. So when it comes to the results of these schemes were mixed. That means some schemes have worked very well, then they try to reduce poverty, but some of the schemes they were not able to reduce this poverty. So what might be the reasons? So some of the reasons are lack of proper implementation. That means the government is launching the schemes, but when it comes to the implementation, the actual implementation, it was not happening properly. Then the next thing is right targeting. That means government is not able to identify the poor, who are actual poor, and how we can uplift them. Then the next thing is overlapping of schemes. So as we have seen since 1993, 95, 99, 2000, 2005, different schemes have been launched, and all these schemes were overlapping, which is also one of the drawback in reducing this poverty. Then apart from that, benefits haven't reached to the actual poor. That means some schemes they are trying to provide the benefits from this anti-poverty measures, but they haven't reached to the actual poor. That means those who are living under below poverty line. So when it comes to the evaluation of these schemes, these are some of the reasons why the schemes have been failed in reducing this poverty. So what must be done next, or you can say what are the challenges that are going to be faced by the government? So the main challenge is that still widespread poverty exists in rural and urban areas. That means if you take state wise, some of the states they are very well in performing in reducing this poverty, but some states still the rate of poverty is very high both in rural and urban areas. And at the same time, some social groups are more vulnerable to this poverty. When we have discussed about the social exclusion and vulnerable groups, we have seen that there are some groups in the society who are in the edge of this poverty. That means who are more prone to fall into below poverty line. So and at the same time we cannot say that we haven't reduced the poverty completely. Of course the poverty is reducing, as we have seen just now only 22%. Once upon a time it was 45%, but still we need to focus on some of the things in order to reduce this poverty. So what are the areas that we need to focus so that we can reduce the poverty? Is that you can say there should be focus on economic growth, as we have seen first itself how economic growth can help in reducing the poverty, and education. That means mainly universal elementary education, providing access to the poor people to get this education. Then empowering the women, that means women empowerment can also help in reducing this poverty. And finally, decrease in population growth, that means if the population is very high, it would be very difficult to reduce this poverty. But if we focus on reduction of this poverty, or you can say reduction of this population growth, then we may try to reduce this poverty. So if we follow this, if we focus on this, we may try to reduce this poverty, and we can try to solve this problem of poverty. So with this, we have completed the chapter called poverty as a challenge. Thank you.